Hi, I'm Joey Hungerford with the Bend International Church of Christ, here with our video on Philippians Part 4, which picks up in Philippians chapter 1, verse 27. Last time we had left Paul, he's in a prison in Rome, but despite that, he is joyful. He's joyful because his example has emboldened the other prisoners to share the gospel more courageously. And now he picks it up talking about living a life worthy of the gospel. That's going to make his joy complete. So to live a life worthy of the gospel, it takes unity, it takes courage, and it takes suffering for Christ. In verse 27 we read, "Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in the one Spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel." And conducting yourselves in a manner that's worthy of the gospel. The word picture that's painted there is actually conducting yourself in the way of a citizen. They're in the Roman Empire, they had duties as a Roman citizen. And today for us, when we ask ourselves what it means to be a citizen, we often think of our rights rather than our responsibilities. The key to living a life worthy of the gospel is to focus on our civil responsibilities rather than our civil rights as a kingdom citizen. For example, in America, we focus on everything we deserve, free speech, for example, as a civil right. But we often ignore our civil responsibilities, defending the country, paying taxes, taking care of our community. Paul calls us to live a life worthy with these duties. You need to ask yourself, what is worth living for? What Paul lived for was of supreme worth. It was worth sacrificing his life for. But we need to ask ourselves, is it worth it? Is Jesus, is the gospel worth living for? If so, then we're going to conduct ourselves in a worthy manner. And the first thing Paul cites is that unity, as if you were one man together, one soul together. That's a radical unity in which we can show we're living a life of the gospel. Pick it up in verse 28. "Without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you, this is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God." Man, that's a radical courage. Despite what opposition we're facing, despite the persecution, if we show that we're courageous, it will be a sign of our salvation, but also a sign of their destruction. Man, when we're courageous in that way, when we're not frightened, how is this a sign to the world of our salvation and of their destruction? Well, when they see how unified we are, when they see how brave we are, they begin to question, maybe there is something to this Christian life. Maybe I am missing out on something. In the same way, though, if we are not courageous as Christians, if we're not sharing our faith, if we're not acting like a madman trying to tell everyone about this gospel and about this Jesus, then they have no reason to question their destruction or their salvation. If all of these Christians are just living their lives, ignoring me, not telling me about my destiny or my place in this world, then why do I have to change my lifestyle? When Christians are courageous and unified in telling others about Christ, it is a sign of what we live. It is living a life worthy of the gospel. See, when we fail to be terrified by our adversaries, we give them a false hope in their way of life, a false confidence in the way they're living, a false condoning in the way they're living. It's false because ultimately it's not going to help them, because ultimately their destruction is assured. And if we believe what we believe, if we're living a life worthy of the gospel, how can we not be courageous and share that with the lost? Let's pick it up, verse 29. "For it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for him." Verse 30. "Since you are going through the same struggle you saw I had, and now hear that I still have." Man, we can't just say that we believe this gospel. We have to live a life that shows we believe this gospel. There has to be a fruitful labor, a daily working out, an actual evidence, not just a mental reevaluation, not just a mind shift or a changing of thought. It has to be a changing of our life. It's been granted that we can suffer for Christ, suffer for his name as Christians. Even on a psychological level, what we sacrifice for, what we suffer for, we value. We put worth in what we sacrifice for. Think about your job. You'll show up on time 5 days a week because you value what it gives you, the return, the money. How much are we willing to sacrifice, to suffer, to value, to put worth on the gospel of Christ? And how are we showing that in our lives? Man, that word for suffering there that Paul uses, it's where we get our modern English term for agonize. And it's an athletic term in the Roman world. To agonize as an athlete, to train yourself, to push your body fully in living this life worthy of the gospel. So I ask you in conclusion, are we just trying to live a good moral life, or are we trying to live a life worthy of the gospel? The world needs to see Christians who are living in this way, united with one another, courageous with one another, and suffering for Christ with one another. The world needs to see those kinds of Christian relationships where we're bearing with one another in love. You know, when the world sees that gospel community, that Christian family, it's amazing. When we fellowship with people who don't look like us, or talk like us, or have the same income that we do, that shows the gospel to the world. We need to live in that way. And in that family, we can have a testimony of what binds us together, what unites us. And that's Christ Jesus. That's what produces this gospel family, where we're striving to share Him with others. But I ask you, is it worth it to you? This life, this gospel, this Jesus. Is it worth changing for? Are we pressing into Jesus together in our relationships and making Him known with others? Are we courageous, united, and fearless? Fearlessly ask yourself that question. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe, and if you're interested in the full lesson podcast, that's in the description down below. Thank you.